One player used banned objects to hit the golf shot of his life. Another escaped from a spot so bad you wouldn't believe it was possible. These are the absolute smartest golf shots ever caught on camera. Tell me, what would you do if your ball was buried in thick rough, one foot stuck in a bunker, and the other slipping on uneven ground? Well, in 2020, Phil Mickelson stared down that exact nightmare. And what he did next was pure madness. Most golfers would reach for a wedge, accept defeat, chip out sideways and take their medicine. But when you're having the worst possible start to a tournament that's haunted you for 14 years, when you're 9 over par and missing every fairway, conventional wisdom goes out the window. Winged Foot's 17th hole, 174 yards to the pin. Ball buried in thick rough. The lie was terrible. The stance? Even worse. And Phil Mickelson pulled out a 3-wood. A 3-wood from thick rough with 1 foot in a bunker? It defied every principle of smart golf. It was pure Phil Mickelson madness. He waggled, set his awkward stance, and swung that club like he meant business. The ball shot high into the air, climbing impossibly from that buried lie. It sailed over the green. Too much club, just as logic would suggest. But somehow, in the most Phil Mickelson way imaginable, it worked. He'd executed the unthinkable, turning disaster into spectacle. Pure genius wrapped in beautiful chaos. FedEx Cup Playoffs 2025. 24 hours earlier, this very same green had been his nightmare. Shane Lowry stood over another lengthy putt, but something felt different this time. The question wasn't whether he could sink it. The question was just how far this ball was going to travel. East Lake's 14th hole had embarrassed the Irishman on Thursday. A 3-putt from 48 feet that left him shaking his head, even par 70, struggling with his putting stroke, missing everything that mattered. The kind of round that makes you question whether you belong in the season finale. But Friday morning brought a different Shane Lowry. After a pep talk from his caddy going down the 9th, something clicked. Just play your own game, Darren Reynolds had told him. Simple advice that unlocked something magical. Then came the 14th hole again, the scene of Thursday's crime. This time, Lowry found himself facing something that would make most golfers laugh out loud. A putt measuring 97 feet and 6 inches, 32 yards. That's not a putt. That's a chip shot distance. That's longer than some par 3 tee shots at mini golf. Lowry lined it up, reading the massive break across East Lake's sloping green. The stroke was smooth, confident. The ball began its journey, rolling across what felt like half the state of Georgia. And then the impossible happened. The ball dropped into the cup from 97 feet 6 inches, setting a new record for the longest putt in FedEx Cup playoffs history. The crowd erupted. Lowry smiled wide, pumping his fist. "That one will be good for the stats," Lowry said. He'd just buried the memory of the hole that used to haunt him, flipping disaster into history. So the clock was ticking, and Mother Nature had other plans. Storm clouds gathered over East Lake as Rory McIlroy stood in the bunker on 18, staring at what could be disaster. His playing partner Scottie Scheffler was already nervous. Not about the shot, about the weather. Time was running out. The horn could blow any second, suspending play for the day. McIlroy needed to get this ball somewhere, anywhere fast. From 39 yards out with the pin tucked at the back, McIlroy faced a delicate bunker shot that required precision. Instead, he caught it thin, really thin. The ball screamed over the green like it was shot from a cannon, sailing toward the massive grandstand behind the 18th. Scheffler watched in horror. This was about to become a lengthy rules situation with drops and measurements. They'd never finish in time. Then physics intervened in the most beautiful way. The ball crashed into the grandstand with a booming thud that echoed all around East Lake. But instead of disappearing into the seating area, it rebounded like a pinball machine gone wild. The ball bounced back onto the green, settling just 17 feet from the hole. "I have never rooted so hard for somebody's ball to come back," Scheffler admitted later, still grinning at the absurdity. And then, because this is Rory McIlroy we're talking about, he stepped up and drained the 17-footer for birdie. Arms raised in celebration, both players laughing at the beautiful chaos that had just unfolded. Sometimes golf rewards the bold with pure magic. Have you ever looked at your ball and thought, how the hell am I supposed to play this? Well, this one sat in the worst spot you could possibly imagine at Harbortown. Johnny Miller stared at his ball, then at the water, then at the wall. Most players would chip out safely and take their medicine. But Miller saw something else entirely. It was 1985 at the Heritage Classic. Miller had found trouble near the green. his ball resting in an almost impossible spot. Between him and the hole stood a concrete bulkhead wall, the kind of barrier that keeps golf balls out of the water, the kind that ends dreams, not creates them. Any normal golfer would play it safe, chip back to the fairway, accept bogey and move on. But Johnny Miller wasn't any normal golfer. He studied the wall like an engineer studying blueprints, the angle, the bounce, the distance. While his playing partners watched in confusion, Miller was doing math in his head that would make a pool player jealous. But what happened next surprised everyone. Miller aimed right at the concrete wall and hit his shot with perfect timing. The ball struck the bulkhead with a sharp crack that echoed across the marsh. Instead of bouncing into the water or careening wildly off course, it ricocheted back exactly where Miller wanted it, landing softly on the green and rolling toward the hole. The crowd exploded. Miller just smiled and picked up his ball. The shot was so good that it became a piece of golf history, the day someone turned a concrete wall into their best friend. So there are bad lies in golf. And then there's what Charles Schwartzel found himself staring at on the 16th hole. His ball sat on concrete, not rough, not sand, actual pavement. The kind that breaks clubs and dreams in equal measure. His caddy was practically begging him to take a drop, pleading with him not to risk it. But Schwartzel wasn't listening. He had other plans. The 2014 Volvo Golf Champions at Durban Country Club had been good to the South African, but this wasn't going to be easy. His ball rested on a cart path with 200 yards to a green he couldn't even see. Trees blocked his view completely. He had no target to aim at except a moving cloud in the sky, but Schwartzel saw opportunity where others saw disaster. He lined up his shot, knowing one tiny mistake would send his ball ricocheting into the trees or sculling across the green into trouble. Schwartzel took his swing with perfect timing, picking the ball clean off the pavement. The ball flew up and over the trees, disappearing from sight as it sailed toward the blind green. When they reached the green, there it was, sitting just 3 feet from the hole. The shot nearly flew in the hole for the eagle, rolling just a few feet past the pin for what looked like one of the most amazing birdies ever. Charles later called it one of the best shots he ever hit, a 200-yard 5-iron off a cart path where the only thing he had to aim at was a moving cloud. Shot of the year? Absolutely. Sometimes the most brilliant solutions come from the most desperate situations. Tony Finau stared at his ball sitting awkwardly on the fringe, knowing one wrong move could ruin everything. But what he did next would leave everyone speechless. The 2022 3M Open was going perfectly for Tony. He was making his charge up the leaderboard, chasing down Scott Piercy's commanding lead. Every shot mattered, every putt counted. This was his moment to grab another PGA Tour victory. Then he found himself in no man's land between the green and the fringe. His ball sat in that tricky spot where you're not quite on the putting surface, but not really in the rough either. Not ideal, to say the least. He pulled out his putter but didn't set up normally. Instead of using the face of the putter like every golfer since the game began, Tony flipped it around. He lined up his shot with total confidence. Tony drew the putter back and made the most delicate stroke imaginable, catching the ball perfectly with just the toe of his club. The ball rolled smoothly across the fringe and onto the green, tracking perfectly toward the hole for an incredible par save. The crowd loved it. Social media went crazy. Even the PGA Tour couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed, sharing the shot with captions like "Tony with the toe putt" and calling it an insane par save. See? Sometimes genius comes in the smallest packages. The exact moment Rory McIlroy turned dominance into a full-blown takeover. It was Friday at the 2011 US Open, and Rory was already off to a hot start. But what happened on the 8th hole made everyone watching sit up a little straighter. He'd just striped a drive down the fairway. Perfect position on the short par 4. With a wedge in hand and a clear look at the pin, this looked like a simple birdie setup. Stick it close, tap it in, keep the momentum going. But Rory had something else in mind. He launched his approach sky high. It flew past the flag, landed softly, and then started to spin. Slowly, deliberately, rolling back toward the cup. And then it disappeared. An eagle. Out of nowhere, the kind of shot that doesn't just change around. It announces your arrival. From that moment on, the tournament was over. Rory never looked back. He finished the week at 16 under par, shattering the US Open scoring record and putting on one of the most dominant displays the game has ever seen. And let me tell you, this one had a crazy ending. Tom Watson stood over his ball just off the green at the par 3 17th at Pebble Beach, tied with Jack Nicklaus in the final round of the 1982 US Open. The pressure? Immense. The lie? Awkward. Most players would have been thinking damage control. Just get it close, tap in for par, move on. But not Watson. He looked at his caddy and said, "I'm going to sink it." And then he did. The ball popped out perfectly, landed on the fringe, took one soft hop, and broke right into the hole. Watson exploded with energy, sprinting up the hill, pumping his fist in the air like he'd just won the whole thing. And in a way, he had. Jack Nicklaus, watching from the clubhouse, knew what that meant. Watson would go on to birdie the 18th too, locking up his only U.S. Open title, thanks to one of the craziest chip-ins in major championship history. And trust me, you've never seen geometry like this on a golf course. It was the final hole of the 2000 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. Tiger Woods was already in full domination mode, steamrolling the field like it wasn't even fair. But just when you thought he might start playing it safe, he pulled off one of the most ridiculous shots you'll ever see. His tee shot on the par 5 18th landed on the right side of the fairway. Not bad, until you saw the tree. A giant cypress, right in his line. Most players would have punched out or taken the safe route down the fairway. But Tiger? He pulled 3-wood and stared down a shot that looked impossible. With the Pacific Ocean stretching out to his left, he aimed out over open water and let it rip. And then came the swing. He launched it high, cut it hard, and somehow the ball bent back around the tree like it had a steering wheel. It soared over the cliffs, curved back onto the green, and rolled to a perfect spot. Even the commentators couldn't believe it. It looked like a video game glitch. But nope, just Tiger being Tiger. A few moments later, he tapped in for birdie and closed out the most dominant U.S. Open win in history by 15 shots. But it's that second shot, carved through wind and over water, that still makes jaws drop to this day. After years of crushing defeats and major heartbreak, he arrived at the final hole of the 2016 U.S. Open at Oakmont with everything on the line. He had a 2-shot lead, but nothing was guaranteed. Earlier in the round, the USGA told him he might be assessed a penalty. They just weren't sure yet. So Johnson played the rest of the round without knowing his actual score. Now standing on the 18th tee, he needed to close it out. No drama, no questions. He smashed his drive down the middle, leaving himself 190 yards to the pin. And then, with a 6-iron in hand, he hit the shot. A laser that pierced through the air, landed soft, and settled just 3 feet from the flag. It was cold, it was clinical, it was the shot that slammed the door. He made the birdie, took the trophy, and finally became a major champion. And penalty or not, there was no doubt who earned it. This shot came from one of the most unforgiving clubs in golf, at one of the most pressure-packed moments of Jack Nicklaus's career. The year was 1972. Pebble Beach was brutal, cold, windy, and relentless. And Jack Nicklaus was just 2 holes away from victory. Standing on the tee of the 17th hole, a 208-yard par 3 staring straight into the wind. But this wasn't a hole you just survive. Not in those conditions. He needed something special. So he reached for the hardest club in the bag, the 1-iron. And let's be honest, when's the last time you saw anyone on tour using that thing? It was a bold choice, especially with that wind, but Nicklaus made it look easy. He launched it high into the breeze, held the line, and watched as the ball pierced through the gusts, dropped onto the green, and slammed straight into the flagstick. It stopped just inches from the hole. That one swing didn't just quiet the nerves, it sealed the championship. A perfect shot at the perfect time from one of the greatest to ever play the game. 21-year-old Jordan Spieth stood on the 18th fairway at Chambers Bay with everything on the line. Just 1 hole earlier, he had doubled the 17th. A disaster that came out of nowhere. His tee shot missed the fairway, his approach rolled off the back, and then he 3-putted from the fringe. Just like that, a 1-shot lead turned into a tie at the top. It was a gut punch at the worst possible time. And now, with a chance to make history, Spieth needed something special. He had 284 yards to the hole. The green was narrow, the pressure insane, and he pulled out a 3-wood. And what happened next was absolutely jaw-dropping. Spieth launched it high, talking to his ball the entire way. Hit it wind, any wind up there, hit it a little bit, begging for just the right help from the skies. The shot came off dead straight, landed perfectly on a slope near the back edge of the green, kicked left, and began tracking straight toward the pin. It stopped just past the flag, leaving a simple 2-putt for birdie. A calm, championship-level answer to the chaos of the hole before. And when Dustin Johnson missed his short birdie putt minutes later, Spieth's birdie on 18 proved to be the difference. This one broke hearts in real time, while the camera was still rolling. The year was 1992. The U.S. Open at Pebble Beach had turned into a windstorm. Gusts were topping 40 miles per hour, the greens were rock hard, and balls were flying in every direction, except the right one. Colin Montgomerie had already posted an even par finish. In those conditions, that looked unbeatable. Even Jack Nicklaus, watching from the booth, started offering congrats. Then came Tom Kite. On the iconic 7th hole, a 106-yard par 3 that was playing like 206, Kite missed the green long and left. No surprise, only one player from the last 15 groups had even found the green. From that lie in that wind, most would have just hoped to get it anywhere near the hole. But Kite saw something. He gave the pitch a nudge, the wind caught it, and it broke right into the cup. Montgomerie watched from the TV booth, hands on his head, stunned. That chip didn't just save Kite, it flipped the whole momentum of the final round. He still had work to do, but that one shot was the statement, the turning point, the proof that he wasn't just surviving the chaos, he was beating it. Matt Fitzpatrick was clinging to a one-shot lead on the 72nd hole of the 2022 U.S. Open at the Country Club. He'd been rock solid all week, but his drive on 18 found trouble. A fairway bunker on the left. It was a nightmare lie. Ball slightly above his feet, no margin for error, and staring straight into the pressure of winning his first major. But Fitzpatrick went for it. With a full swing and a 9-iron in hand, he launched a dart that cut through the tension and dropped just 18 feet from the pin. No wild celebration, no fist pump. Just a deep breath and the quiet confidence of a player who had just taken control of the tournament. He two-putted for par and won his first major, thanks to a shot that showed nerves of steel when it mattered most. And this one came from a 21-year-old amateur who played like he owned the place. Before Jon Rahm was a major champion, before he was one of the most feared players in the world, he was just a rising star trying to prove he belonged. And at the 2016 U.S. Open at Oakmont, he didn't just belong, he lit the place up. It was the third round. Rahm stepped up to the par 5 12th hole and laid up with his second shot, leaving himself 111 yards to the pin. Nothing flashy, just smart golf. But what came next? That was pure magic. He gave his wedge a smooth swing. The ball climbed into the air, landed a few feet past the flag, and then zipped backward, spinning straight into the hole. Eagle! The crowd went wild. And Rahm? He just calmly walked up and took it all in. It was a glimpse of what was coming. He would go on to finish as low amateur that week. But that shot? That shot looked like something out of a primetime highlight reel, and it came from a kid who was just getting started. It was 1995 at Shinnecock Hills. Corey Pavin wasn't the biggest name in the field, and he definitely wasn't the biggest hitter. But on Sunday afternoon, with everything on the line, he stood on the 18th fairway with a one-shot lead, needing just one more big moment to close the deal. And then came the shot. He had 228 yards to the flag. The wind was up, nerves were high, and instead of playing it safe, Pavin pulled his 4-wood. Not a club you see every day from the fairway, especially not on the 72nd hole of the U.S. Open. But he made it count. He striped it. The ball soared through the air and landed just a few feet from the cup. You could hear the crowd explode before it even stopped rolling. That one swing sealed it. A tap-in par, a major championship, and one of the gutsiest clutch shots you'll ever see under pressure. Corey Pavin didn't overpower Shinnecock. He outplayed it. And that 4-wood, straight into the history books. A moment of pure Tiger Woods magic under maximum pressure. It was 2008 at Torrey Pines, Sunday afternoon. Tiger was limping on a fractured leg, held together by adrenaline, painkillers, and pure willpower. He had one hole left and one chance left. He had to birdie the 18th to force a playoff with Rocco Mediate. His tee shot found the fairway. His approach landed short, but a brilliant chip gave him a chance. A downhill 12-foot putt with everything on the line. It wasn't just a must-make, it was the kind of putt that defines legacies. Tiger took a breath, rolled it pure, and when it dropped, Torrey Pines exploded. He threw his arms into the air like a matador. Wounded, defiant, iconic. That putt didn't just force a playoff. It capped off one of the gutsiest performances the sport has ever seen, and set the stage for Tiger's final major win of his prime. One swing, one shot, and one moment that sealed a championship. The year was 1976, and the U.S. Open had come to the Atlanta Athletic Club for the very first time. It was hot, it was tense, and it all came down to the 18th hole. Jerry Pate, just 22 years old, had climbed into the lead for the first time all day. One shot clear of his playing partner, John Mahaffey. Mahaffey blinked first. His approach shot splashed into the pond guarding the green. But Jerry? He was in the right rough, 190 yards out with the flag tucked all the way to the back left. The smart play was to bail out right, take par, and hope for the best. But that's not what he did. He pulled 5-iron, took a deep breath, and flushed it. The ball flew high, cut through the air, and landed like it had eyes. 2 feet from the cup. That single shot sealed the deal. A tap-in birdie, a one-shot win. And just like that, Jerry Pate became a major champion with one of the coldest finishers in U.S. Open history. Let's talk about a shot that made the brutal Oakmont look easy, at least for one swing. It was the first round of the 2016 U.S. Open, and 21-year-old Matt Fitzpatrick had just missed the green on the par 4 second. His ball rolled into a nasty little greenside bunker. Deep, awkward, and not exactly the place you expect to create a highlight. A spot where most players would be content to get up and down for par. But Fitzpatrick had other plans. He took his stance, executed a precise swing, and watched as the ball sailed out of the sand and dropped straight into the cup. No bounce, just a clean dunk. Bunker to bucket. No need to read the green. No need to worry about the speed. Just a cold-blooded hole-out that turned a stressful par into a walk-off birdie. At Oakmont of all places, that's something you don't forget. On to the next one. It looked like Larry Nelson was running out of magic. He had barely made the cut at the 1983 U.S. Open, but somehow clawed his way into contention with 2 incredible rounds. Now, with just a few holes left at Oakmont, he was tied for the lead, right in the thick of it. But Oakmont isn't the kind of place where you coast to victory. You have to earn it. And on the 16th hole, a tough par 3, Nelson faced one of the most intimidating putts you'll ever see. 60 feet. Uphill at first, then breaking hard downhill. The kind of putt you'd just hope to cozy up close. But Nelson gave it a smooth roll. The ball climbed the ridge, caught the right line, and just kept tracking. And then it dropped. A 60-foot birdie in the final round on one of the fastest greens in major championship golf. That putt gave Nelson the outright lead, and he never looked back. It was the moment that turned a steady charge into a legendary win. But Tiger Woods wasn't most players, and the 2000 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach wasn't about playing it safe. It was the 6th hole, long, uphill, and brutal. After a wayward drive, Tiger found his ball buried in 4 inches of thick rough, 205 yards from the flag. In front of him stood a towering tree with the green sitting far above on a steep, elevated plateau. Just getting the ball back in play would have been impressive. Instead, Tiger reached for a 7-iron, not to lay up, but to go for it. He launched the ball up and over the tree, over the rise, and somehow, against every odd in the book, it landed on the green and held. The NBC announcers were stunned. Roger Maltby summed it up perfectly. It's just not a fair fight. Because in that moment, it wasn't. Tiger wasn't battling the field. He was on a completely different level. The year was 1990, and Hale Irwin was quietly grinding his way through the final round at Medina. At 45 years old, he wasn't exactly the center of attention. It had been over a decade since his last major win, and most figured his best days were behind him. But on Sunday afternoon, he found himself with a chance. One last hole. One long putt. Irwin stood over a 45-footer on the 18th green. Uphill, winding, with everything on the line. It looked more like a lag putt situation than a game changer. But he hit it perfectly. The crowd leaned in as the ball made its way up the slope, took the break, and disappeared into the cup. The place erupted. Irwin exploded with a fist pump, slapped hands with a fan, and broke into a full-on jog off the green, grinning like a kid. That putt forced a playoff, and the next day, Irwin finished the job. He became the oldest U.S. Open winner in history, thanks to a putt that started as a prayer and ended as a moment for the ages. Scottie Scheffler was right in the thick of it during the 3rd round of the 2022 U.S. Open at the Country Club in Brookline. He'd been playing steady, patient golf, keeping himself in the hunt without making too much noise. But then came the par 5 8th. After a solid drive and a smart layup, Scheffler stood over his 3rd shot from 102 yards out. It's a distance every pro loves. But the pressure? That's what separates the contenders from the champions. Scheffler gave it one smooth swing. The ball soared high, landed softly on the front of the green, and then the crowd started leaning forward. It kept rolling, breaking slightly left, and then disappeared right into the cup. Eagle. Boom. The crowd exploded. The leaderboard flipped. And just like that, Scheffler had taken the outright lead at the US Open. What made the moment even bigger was what it meant. A surge of momentum in one of the tightest majors in recent memory. Fitzpatrick, Zalatoris, and Scheffler were all trading blows. But this eagle, it was a haymaker. Final hole of the US Open tied for the lead, pressure at absolute maximum. Bryson DeChambeau stood on the 18th tee at Pinehurst number 2, knowing a par might be the difference between heartbreak and history. He pulled driver, and the ball veered left, landing near one of the grandstands just under a tree. It left him with a brutally tough lie and a not ideal angle into the green. His second shot? Aggressive. He went for it, but couldn't quite pull it off. The ball landed in the greenside bunker, 54 yards from the flag. And that's when the magic happened. Bryson climbed in, stared down a 54-yard shot, one of the most uncomfortable distances in golf, and just went for it. The ball soared out of the sand, landed softly, and started rolling. It stopped just 4 feet from the hole. He made the putt, and the crowd exploded. And just like that, Bryson DeChambeau was a 2-time US Open champion. Thanks to one of the most perfectly timed bunker shots in major championship history, but we find ourselves at Augusta National during the final round of the 2010 Masters. A player known for taking risks is about to face a decision that would define his career. Phil Mickelson has got a slim lead as he steps up to the 13th tee, one of Augusta's scariest par fives. Rays Creek guards the green like a moat around a castle. One bad shot and you're toast. So what does Phil do? Blasts his drive way right, completely missing the fairway. When he finds his ball, it's sitting in pine straw, that slippery stuff that gives you zero solid footing. And there are 2 massive trees directly between him and the green. Every ounce of golf common sense screams, "Punch it out sideways, dummy! Live to fight another hole!" But this is Phil we're talking about. The guy who thinks playing it safe is for people who don't have the guts to be great. His caddy bones gives him the cold, hard facts. 207 yards to the flag, 187 to clear the creek. The gap between those trees? Maybe as wide as a dinner plate? Okay, slight exaggeration, but you get the picture. He grabs his 6-iron, takes aim at that tiny gap, and makes the most fearless swing you'll ever see. The ball rockets through that window, his club head missing a tree by a whisker. The shot sails over the water, lands on the green, and stops just 4 feet from the hole. He missed the eagle putt, but tapped in for birdie to stay 2 ahead. That shot was Phil's entire career, packed into one swing. It carried him to his 3rd Masters win, and he became an instant legend in golf's greatest escapes. We're transported back way before fancy golf apps and shot trackers. Here, a young Spanish hotshot got so lost on the course it actually made him famous. It's 1979 at Royal Lytham in St. Anne's, and 21-year-old Seve Ballesteros is trying to bag his first major championship. Ballesteros is up by 2 shots in the final round when he gets to the 16th hole. Hitting fairways wasn't exactly Seve's specialty that week. He'd found only 9 of them in the entire tournament. When he yanks that driver head cover off on the 16th tee, everyone gets that pit-in-the-stomach feeling. Sure enough, he blasts his tee shot so far right that fans are diving for cover as the ball sails into a temporary parking lot. The crowd rushes over to help find the ball. And where does it end up? Under a parked car. But here's where Sev catches a break. Since this makeshift parking area was technically part of the course, he gets a free drop away from the car. Even better, all those cars had been parked there all week, squashing the grass flat. Cool as a cucumber, he pulls off a ridiculous pitch shot that stops about 20 feet from the hole. Then he steps up to seal the deal. The putt starts rolling, tracking the whole way, and drops right in the heart for a birdie. From a parking lot, Ballesteros cruises to a 3-shot win and grabs his first major. That parking lot miracle wasn't just lucky. It was pure Seve magic. We jump ahead to 2013 and find ourselves at Torrey Pines, where a certain superstar was in the process of rebuilding his mystique after years of struggle. What happened next proved the magic was still there. Tiger Woods is here, basically at his personal backyard with 7 previous wins there, cruising with a nice lead in the final round. On the 4th hole, Tiger's tee shot goes totally haywire and ends up behind a tree. We're not talking kinda near a tree. We're talking directly behind it. with branches hanging so low you'd need to crawl under them. Most players would just chip it sideways, but Tiger spots this tiny little gap, not even straight ahead, but way off to the right. He makes this funky swing and boom! The ball shoots out at a crazy angle to the right, then hooks like it's on a string, weaving between trees before bouncing its way toward the green. But he's not done yet. The ball stops short, so he still needs to get his approach shot close to the pin and save his par. With one smooth stroke, that ball rolls across the green, tracks toward the hole, and disappears for a birdie. The place goes nuts. Only he could pull that off. Classic Tiger, turning a total disaster into something just brilliant. And we witness an unforgettable display of athletic golf at the 2021 Ryder Cup, when an American star faced a shot so difficult it required more than just good technique. It demanded a gymnast's balance and a daredevil's courage. At Whistling Straits, Jordan Spieth landed in a spot so bad, it looked like someone placed the ball there as a practical joke. Thomas's tee shot on the par 3 17th rolled just off the green, but just off doesn't tell the story. This ball ended up on a slope so steep, you'd need climbing gear to get to it. We're talking almost vertical with nothing but Lake Michigan waiting below. When Spieth got there, he literally had to jump up just to see where he was supposed to hit to. Everybody figured he'd just declare it unplayable and take a drop. Instead, he opens his stance super wide, plants his feet at this crazy angle, and takes what can only be described as a baseball swing. The force of it was so violent that his momentum immediately sent him stumbling backward down the hill after impact. As Spieth's fighting for his life not to tumble into the lake, the ball launches almost straight up. While he's doing this backward scramble down the slope, somehow keeping his feet, the ball lands feather soft on the green and stops just feet from the hole. The American crowd absolutely loses their minds. And just like that, what looked like total disaster turned into one of the greatest saves you'll ever see. Our next incredible escape comes from a man who's been defying Father Time for decades. The 2010 Allianz Championship came down to a sudden death playoff between Bernhard Langer and John Cook. First playoff hole, Langer gets in serious trouble when his approach finds a greenside bunker. But this wasn't your standard bunker shot. His ball plugged into the face of the sand trap, buried so deep you could barely see half of it, about 45 feet from the pin. Meanwhile, Cook's sitting pretty. All he needs is a routine 2-putt, and Langer would need a miracle just to make the next playoff hole. The crowd goes dead quiet as Langer sets up. With a quick splash into the sand, his ball pops up, lands on the green, and starts rolling toward the hole. Then something straight out of a movie happens. The ball keeps tracking, picks up speed, and drops right in the cup for an eagle. The normally robotic Langer loses his mind, dropping his club and jumping around like a kid on Christmas morning. When Cook missed his eagle attempt, Langer had snatched victory from the jaws of defeat with a shot that defied all logic. We journeyed to Scotland's fearsome Carnoustie golf links in 2007, where an Irishman was about to experience the most dramatic, emotional roller coaster in major championship history. Padraig Harrington walks onto the 18th hole, ominously nicknamed Home, with a one-shot lead over Sergio Garcia. This exact same hole had destroyed Van de Velde's dreams in 1999. The ghosts of that meltdown were practically visible in the Scottish air. Then, splash! His ball sails left, bounces just before a tiny bridge crossing the Barryburn, and then rolls off the edge into the water. After taking his drop, Harrington still has a chance to limit the damage. But then, you won't believe this? His third shot also finds the Barryburn at its next crossing. Are you kidding me? At this point, you're thinking his tournament is toast. But somehow, Harrington keeps his cool. After another drop, he hits a beauty to about 8 feet. This putt is for a double bogey 6. Still awful, but at least keeping him in the hunt. With nerves of steel, Harrington drains the putt. Now it's Sergio's turn. All he needs is a par on 18 to win his first major. He hits a perfect drive but finds a bunker with his approach. After a smooth recovery, he's facing a 7-footer for par and the championship. Sergio's putt looks excellent the whole way, catches the edge, and spins out. Brutal. Suddenly we're headed to a playoff, and Harrington, gifted new life, dominates the 4-hole overtime to become the first Irishman to win the Open in 60 years. And that's how Harrington avoided disaster. Well, to be honest, he didn't. But he avoided a total disaster when everything was falling apart. We find a major champion thinking outside the box. Or, more accurately, outside the boundaries, at the 2024 Cognizant Classic, proving that sometimes the rules of golf can be your best friend. See, Justin Rose found his ball in a spot that would make most golfers just laugh and take a penalty. It was nestled right up against a green mesh boundary fence, separating the course from someone's backyard. Rose spotted a rules loophole that blew everyone's mind, since his ball was still technically in bounds, just barely inside the fence. And Rule 18.2 says you can actually stand out of bounds to play a ball that's in bounds. Rose could hop the fence, stand in some random person's yard, and hit the shot legally. What followed was like, honestly, something out of a golf sitcom. Rose climbs over the fence and positions himself in a stranger's backyard to play a ball that's still in bounds. The shot was ridiculous. He had zero backswing space, couldn't set his feet properly, and somehow needed to advance this ball 124 yards back toward the fairway. Rose punches the ball back into play, but he's not done with his adventure. He still needs to get up and down from 78 yards just to escape with par. His wedge shot from the fairway is absolute magic, landing inches from the hole on the first bounce before settling just 2 feet away. When he taps in, Rose has pulled off one of the most creative par saves you'll ever see. The Zurich Classic got a makeover in 2017, becoming the PGA Tour's first team event in almost 4 decades. But the real drama came from Mother Nature and a guy who refused to let darkness kill his chances. Kevin Kisner and Scott Brown were battling the team of Jonas Blixt and Cameron Smith, but they were also racing against the setting sun. By the time they reached the 18th hole, it was basically nighttime. The only light came from electronic scoreboards glowing in the darkness. Kisner and Brown trailed by a shot playing the par 5 18th. After decent drives and layups, Kisner faced a pitch shot from about 40 yards. The green was soaking wet from the day's rain, making distance control a total guessing game. Plus, in the gathering darkness, he could barely make out the flagstick. But Kisner pulled off something magical. His chip skipped across the wet green, smacked the flagstick dead center, and dropped into the cup for an eagle. The crowd went bananas as Kisner threw his arms up in celebration, a shadowy figure barely visible in the darkness. That dramatic eagle forced a playoff, proving that sometimes you can hit your absolute best shots when you can barely see what you're doing. After years of Masters heartbreak, could Rory McIlroy finally overcome the demons that had haunted his career? Let me explain. The 2025 Masters wasn't just a golf tournament for Rory McIlroy, it was his white whale, his Everest, the one thing that had eluded him for 14 agonizing years. The only major championship he needed to complete the career Grand Slam. Now in 2025, he finally seemed poised to exercise those demons, building a comfortable 5-shot lead with just 8 holes left in the final round. But Augusta National is golf's greatest drama queen. A bogey at 11, a chunked chip into the water at 13 for a double, another bogey at 14. Suddenly his lead evaporated. McIlroy somehow steadied himself, making clutch birdies at 15 and 17. But then Justin Rose drained an improbable 20-footer on 18 for birdie. Now Rory needed a par on the last to win. He lines up a 5-footer for the green jacket and misses. So now we're headed to a sudden death playoff, starting on the 18th hole, the very same hole where Rory just gagged a short putt moments earlier. Both players find the fairway with their drives. Rose hits first, putting his approach about 15 feet from the hole. Now McIlroy faces the exact same approach shot that led to his missed par putt just minutes ago. So, with renewed focus, McIlroy pipes his approach shot. The ball soars through the Georgia sky and lands softly, rolling to just 4 feet from the cup. After Rose misses his birdie try, McIlroy faces another short putt, eerily similar to the one he'd botched earlier. This time, no mistake. When the ball drops, McIlroy lets out this primal scream and falls to his knees. It wasn't just technically perfect, it showed the mental toughness to bounce back from failure and nail essentially the same shot moments later. The 2017 Open at Royal Birkdale gave us a rescue mission like no other. Jordan Spieth's tee shot on the par 4 13th sailed so far right, you couldn't even see the fairway from where he ended up. This thing sailed over massive dunes, completely out of sight. Then, I warn you, this is ridiculous, Spieth, his caddy and rules official spent 20 minutes wandering over dunes, debating where he could take his drop. Finally, they settled on a drop point that was comically far from the hole, all the way back on the practice range behind some equipment trucks. Spieth was literally about to play his third shot from a practice area that wasn't even part of the golf course. After this 20-minute odyssey, Spieth finally hit his shot from the driving range, over dunes, back toward the hole. Somehow he advanced it near the green and got up and down for a bogey. But wait, I haven't told you the most insane part yet. Rather than crumbling, Spieth caught absolute fire. His next 4 holes were like a golf fever dream. Nearly a hole-in-one at 14, a monster 48-foot eagle putt at 15, another long birdie putt at 16, and yet another birdie at 17. This ridiculous birdie-eagle-birdie-birdie run turned what looked like a legendary collapse into a comfortable 3-shot victory. It was one of the most dramatic turnarounds ever seen in a major championship. Jim Furyk and Tiger Woods went toe-to-toe for 7 exhausting extra holes. The high drama peaked on the very first playoff hole. Furyk found serious trouble when his approach shot splashed into a greenside bunker. Furyk's first attempt from the sand was a complete disaster. The ball hit the lip of the bunker and rolled right back to his feet. He's now hitting his 4th shot from the exact same spot, with Tiger safely on the green looking at a routine par. To extend the playoff, Furyk would have to hole this bunker shot. The odds? About the same as finding a unicorn in your backyard. Standing in the same spot where he'd just failed miserably, Furyk adjusted his technique and took another swing. This time, the ball popped out perfectly, landed on the green, and rolled straight into the heart of the cup for the most unlikely par save imaginable. The gallery erupted as Furyk charged onto the green, pumping his fist like he'd just won a major. The battle raged on for 5 more holes, with both players pulling off remarkable escapes, before Tiger finally ended the marathon with a birdie. The year was 2013, and what one Spanish player did at Bay Hill was, well, I'll show you. Sergio Garcia's tee shot on the 10th hole got stuck in a tree. Not behind a tree, not under a tree. In a tree, lodged in the branches about 15 feet off the ground. For 99.9% of golfers, this is an automatic penalty drop. But Sergio isn't most golfers. When he spotted his ball clearly visible in the tree, the gears in his head started turning. I can't even believe what I'm narrating right now. I don't even want to imagine what the viewers must have been thinking. Garcia started positioning himself in the tree like he was about to. Wait, he's not really going to. He is. Sergio was going to play the ball directly from its perch in the branches. With just one hand on the club, he made a backward swing and somehow made clean contact. The ball dropped magically back to the fairway. Mission impossible. Accomplished. Just as impressive was his dismount. After pulling off this circus act, Sergio climbed down from the tree with such athletic grace, you'd think the next sport he'd try was gymnastics. The 2012 Masters came down to a sudden death playoff between Bubba Watson and Louis Oosthuizen. Bubba's drive drifted way right, missing the fairway by miles. His ball was buried in pine straw in the trees, with absolutely no direct path to the green. Instead of the safe play, Bubba spotted a small gap that would require him to curve the ball like a banana, hooking it around 40 yards from right to left. In a practice round? Maybe worth a try for fun. In a major championship playoff? Absolute madness. The gallery went silent as Bubba stood over the ball. His swing was pure Bubba, long, flowing, and nothing like what they teach in golf school. At impact, he deliberately closed the club face, putting massive right-to-left spin on the ball. The crowd gasped as the ball completed its 40-yard hook, landed softly on the green, and rolled to within 15 feet of the hole. Though Bubba missed the birdie putt, his par was enough to win when Oosthuizen bogeyed. That miraculous recovery from the trees had earned Watson his first green jacket. The shot earned the perfect nickname, the Bubba Hook. It's now part of Masters lore and the perfect example of how creative thinking can turn disaster into opportunity. In 2012, at Jack Nicklaus's Memorial Tournament. And who do we have here? None other than the one and only Tiger Woods. Tiger's tee shot sailed long and right, finding nasty, thick rough behind the green. When he got there, he faced an absolute nightmare. A downhill lie in juicy rough with hardly any green to work with and water lurking just beyond the hole. Instead of playing it safe, Tiger opened the face of his 60-degree wedge to an almost ridiculous angle, essentially turning the club sideways. He was going for a full-blown flop shot, launching the ball almost straight up with barely any forward movement. Even in practice, this shot is super risky. Under tournament pressure, with water waiting to swallow any mistake, It was borderline crazy. As Tiger took his stance, you could feel the electricity in the air. The shot launched almost vertically, climbing high into the Ohio sky before starting to drop. The ball landed with perfect softness on the front part of the green, took a couple of small bounces, and started tracking toward the hole. When it disappeared into the cup for a birdie, the crowd absolutely went wild. Tiger gave one of his classic uppercut fist pumps. Jack Nicklaus, watching from just off the green, stood there shaking his head in amazement. That birdie on 16 carried Tiger to victory, his 73rd PGA Tour win, tying Nicklaus on the all-time wins list at Jack's own tournament. Beyond the numbers and records, this shot sent a message. It announced that Tiger Woods, the artist, the escape artist, the magician, was back. Not just a technically solid golfer grinding out scores, but the creative genius who could do the impossible when it mattered most. Oh, and now you're still with us. We have another great golf video for you to watch, right in the middle of the screen. Enjoy!